are live on TikTok and Instagram. I see people are coming in now. I just let a few people more arrive and get started. Please have some good news for us. I don't have good news for you, unfortunately. This is kind of regular questions and answers, but obviously with a focus this week on the whole fact that the shock resignation of Leo Varadkar. He's going to be gone. He's gone already as Fine Gael leader. He's going to be gone as Taoiseach in a couple of weeks' time, and what that means. So we get started. People like, share, all that stuff. Put in questions. I'll do my best to answer them. I don't have loads of time, to be honest, like 15 minutes maybe max, and then I got to run, I'm afraid. But people, I'm sure, saw that Varadkar very unexpectedly resigned as Taoiseach yesterday, or as kind of announced he's going to resign as Taoiseach, and resigned immediately as Fine Gael leader. He did his last leader's questions. Obviously, he had clapped himself on his own back for his speech, talking about all the good things he did. He kind of had a sideways comment of like, well, people will say bad things, and obviously didn't mention the fact that under his reign you have record levels of homelessness, you have record rent prices, you have record house prices, you have 1 million people on hospital waiting lists, you have 40% of parents not feeding themselves properly in order that their kids can feed themselves properly. You have huge numbers of parents going to food banks, you have incredible inequality. So you have this, high level of GDP, but then on the ground, very, very many people struggling. That's his legacy in reality. But anyway, he's gone. He's seen the writing is on the wall, I think, in terms of Fine Gael, in terms of the drubbing that they're going to get at the upcoming local and European elections, and then in the general election that will come soon enough after that, and he's decided to go. Is there something else behind it? We don't know. It might become clear in the next few days or weeks. If there is, we will see. The most scandalous thing about it is that they are planning now, Taoiseach is gone, and they are planning just to replace the Taoiseach without a general election, not allowing the people to decide, and instead the members of Fine Gael, or even just the Fine Gael parliamentary party, are going to decide who runs this country. So every time we've said this over the last few days, they've said, "Oh, it's a parliamentary democracy. That's how things work." So that's like legally and constitutionally true. Of course, we're not saying it's unconstitutional for them to do it, but we are saying it's blatantly undemocratic that you're going to have a third Taoiseach in the space of one general election, when the government parties, both Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, are massively unpopular. Is that at this stage the people should have the right to decide. There should be a general election. I think the democratic case for that is very, very clear. I mean, the Fine Gael membership is something like 0.4% or 0.04% of the country's population. They are a group of older people, they're a group of quite privileged people, they're a group of quite right-wing, quite conservative people, and they're the ones who are going to decide. Even more than that, actually what's likely to happen is that it looks like there will be effectively a coronation, that Simon Harris will be made Taoiseach without even a decision of the Fine Gael membership, right? So just 50, 60 people in the Fine Gael parliamentary party will get to decide. They're going to nominate. He's got all the nominations so far, nobody else has any. So every chance that he continues. He's a man who was effectively a lack of confidence in Simon Harris brought down the last government. There was due to be a motion of no confidence in Simon Harris, and then a general election was precipitated. So we already have no confidence in Simon Harris. He's going to be a continuation of this right-wing government of Fine Gael, of running the country in the interest of those at the top, of the big corporate landlords, the private developers, the big polluting corporations, the private health industry. That's who this country is going to continue to be run for under Simon Harris. So we're going to keep up the pressure in calling for a general election, that the people have the right to decide. And in that general election, what our argument is that people should be presented with a clear choice. This government came together as a result of an successful attempt to stop a fundamental change taking place. People in February 2020, a lot of people, unprecedented numbers, voted against Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, voted for a change. And then for the first time in history, they came together in one formal coalition to stop that taking place. We think at the next election, people have to be given a clear choice. Continue with the coalition of the uncaring, a government of landlords, for landlords, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, the Greens, whatever right-wing independents that they cobble together, or an alternative left government. So we're committing that we would not be going into a coalition with the establishment parties, with Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael, as people before profit. That's our very, very clear commitment. But we want, and we're appealing to Sinn Féin and the Social Democrats to make the same commitment, to say we're not going to go in, we think there should be a left government, and that will give people, hope that an alternative is actually an offer here. I'm not going to vote like many people did in the last election, voting for the Greens, thinking you're voting for an alternative, but you end up putting Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael back in power, voting for Labour in the past, ending up putting Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael back in power. Sorry, Moira asked why you're doing it live and not responding to questions put you on here. I'm just coming to the questions right now. Instead, your constituents calling them racist and far right. I don't know what that means. How can we push a general election? It's a good question. Like, how do you actually make that happen? There is no constitutional mechanism or whatever to trigger a general election. I think, like, pushing for it loudly in terms of social media, if there was enough interest in it, even in terms of, like, on the streets, having a protest saying we need to have a general election, putting people on the streets, I think they're the kind of things that we need to see. But like starting, I think, like the likes of getting general election now trending right across social media will have an impact. I think that's the kind of thing we should be doing now, and really try and bring pressure to bear. Because if you look, someone asked about how the process will take place in Fine Gael. They have their nomination process now, and then they're basically planning by, I think it's April 6th, to have decided who the new leader of Fine Gael is. Then they'll come to the Dáil in that week, the week beginning the 8th of April. So on Tuesday, the 9th of April, they will have to have a session in the Dáil to elect the Taoiseach. So potentially a big mobilisation outside the Dáil then to say, not our Taoiseach, we don't agree with this, we need to have a general election, and putting pressure on the likes of the Greens, the likes of the Independents, who they rely on for votes, the likes of the Healy-Raes, Matty McGraths, Michael Lowry, those people who have voted with the government in the past, put pressure on them to say, don't stick with your old parties of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. Instead, we need a general election. So building pressure on those people to try and make them lose the vote for the Taoiseach, and then that would trigger a general election. What do you have against people who actually work? You seem to think unemployed people should get everything. I no idea where you got that. You turn up to the Dáil dressed like you've barely slept. Respect the Dáil. Kim Jong-un, I'm very sorry that I disrespected you, a sovereign person. Sorry that I don't like my clothes. Someone asking over on Instagram, is PVP going to join with Soc Dems or others to push a left vote in the next election? We'd like to. So we would like to be, we would like for ourselves, Sinn Féin, Soc Dems, people like Joan Collins, Thomas Pringle, etc., to come together and to say we think there should be a left-wing government. We commit to not going into coalition with Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. Unfortunately, so far, Sinn Féin and Social Democrats haven't agreed to not go into coalition with Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. Holly Cairns gave an interview yesterday on Drive Time. I was listening, she was really lashing into correctly Fine Gael's record, but then the presenter said, "Oh, but would you put them back into power?" And she didn't say no. She said, "We'll talk to everybody, respecting the wishes of the electorate." And I don't buy that. That's not respecting the wishes of the electorate. The electorate needs to be offered a clear choice to say, don't put Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael back in. After over 100 years, it's time for a fundamental change in this country. User 209, something like that, says, what do you mean when you say left wing? I think we currently have a right wing government, by which I mean a government that rules in the interest of the very elite in our society. The corporate landlords who are getting rich off the housing crisis, the private developers getting rich from the housing crisis, the private hospitals getting rich from the health crisis. In every crisis you see, there's someone getting rich from it. That's who the government rules in the interests of, right? That's right-wing policies. Left-wing policies are policies that put the interests of ordinary people, working people, unemployed people, young people, the big majority in our society who don't have a lot of wealth and power, who put those people first. Someone says they're quite happy with a socially progressive centre-right government. Thanks. I will dispute the socially progressive. I think that those elements of social progress that we saw in terms of marriage equality, abortion rights, they were driven from below. I mean, Leo Varadkar was opposed to gay marriage just not that many years before the marriage equality vote. Leo Varadkar was opposed to abortion rights not that many years before the repeal vote. It is ordinary people from below that forced those changes. If after the next general election the only viable government might be Sinn Féin Fianna Fáil, what do you think? Well, I don't think Sinn Féin should go in with Fianna Fáil. We certainly wouldn't be going in with Fianna Fáil. I think we need to offer people an alternative. The way to maximise the chance that there is a majority for an alternative is to give that commitment now, to give people hope. Because I think a lot of people can lose hope, can think, Jesus, politics, no matter what you vote for, you always seem to end up with the same thing. You always seem to end up with Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael or both of them in power, no matter what way you do. So Labour, I remember in 2011, got a huge surge of support on the basis of Labour's way, not Frankfurt's way. They had posters up saying Gilmore for Taoiseach. And then they went into government with Fine Gael and they just continued with Frankfurt's way. They continued with the rule of the Troika. So you completely demoralise people. The same with the Greens. You need to offer people an alternative. That's why it's important, I think. How will the country be different under a left government? Is that not just a populist government? I think the country would be fundamentally different with a proper left government that ruled in the interests of the renters, those who are trying to buy a house, those on the housing waiting list, the children with additional needs who are getting completely screwed over, who are waiting years to just see for a first appointment for an assessment, because you would stop, this country is run for the big corporations, that's why we have a tax haven policy. It's why that's the only thing that they can think of is tracked in Google, Apple, etc., make them pay no tax. It's run in the interest of the big agri-food industry. It's run in the interest of the likes of Ryanair. It's run in the interest of IRES REIT, big corporate landlords. So if instead you run the country in the interest of ordinary people, what does that look like? It means, for example, take the housing crisis, proper eviction ban. It means rent controls that bring rents down to an affordable level. It means you actually tackle the housing crisis. So you say that we don't have to deliver housing by having more profits for these people, which is the only thing that they can think of. Instead, we need to have a state construction company that says we're going to build homes for people, and they're going to be genuinely affordable housing to buy, or social housing paid a differential rent to the council. And you actually use public land to build public homes. Similarly, in terms of the health service, you nationalise the private hospitals, you establish a one-tier quality national health service. In terms of climate action, you take on the real polluters, those at the top. The big corporations, you take into public ownership. You change the whole model of farming in this country in the interests of small and medium farmers. You stop with the madness of putting all our electricity to the data centres. And you plan the economy for people's needs instead of profit. Do I think there will be a general election before next year? I don't know. I previously, before Varadkar resigned, I would have bet that the general election would be kind of October, November of this year. I still think that's quite possible. I think there's some talk that the new leader will, if they manage to ride out the next few weeks, they'll want to stay in there kind of as long as they can, which would then point to next March. But I hope not. Laura says, my concern is that Sinn Féin is too centre to do anything meaningfully left. What are your thoughts? I think that's a very legitimate concern. I also share that concern, definitely. I share that worry. I think there are, though, lots of people, good people, who do look to Sinn Féin for change. So we need to kind of put them to the test. So that's why we continually make these requests on them, make these demands on them. I think, unfortunately, there is every danger, every chance that they betray people's expectations. They just put Fianna Fáil back in. That's definitely a danger. The only thing that can kind of change that is pressure on them from below, I think. Thanks for bringing up animal welfare issues. has to be an election this year. I agree. Apparently my life has been restricted. Is that because we're being bombarded by people claiming that? Anyway, that's bizarre. Why do I believe I have the right to remove people's access to private healthcare? I don't. But I don't think that you should have private companies that are able to profit off of the health crisis. It's like, another example, people think it's scandalous. We say you shouldn't be able to sit on a vacant property forever. You shouldn't, not with a housing crisis. So we propose that they be compulsorily purchased. So we buy them, but it is a scandal that people are able to sit on multiple empty properties in this day and age, whenever we have over 14,000 people in emergency accommodation. And we don't think people should be able to profit from the health crisis. Would we go into government with Sinn Féin? We would like there to be a left government with Sinn Féin. We certainly, after the next election, if there's a chance to vote for a government which does not have Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael, we will do that without conditions. We'll vote for a Sinn Féin Taoiseach, as we did after the last one. Whether we join the government and take positions in that government, like ministerial positions in that government, would depend on whether they agree with kind of our core policies, whether they agree that there needs to be rent controls to bring rents down, whether they agree that there needs to be an All-Ireland National Health Service, whether they agree there needs to be a state construction company, whether they agree we need to stop the use of Shannon Airport by the US military. Things like that would determine, okay, this is going to be a government that is actually going to stand up to the rich in this country, government that's going to fight for eco-socialist change. That's the kind of government that we would join. Otherwise, we would vote for it, allow it to be formed. Every good thing they did, we'd vote for it. But then every bad thing, we'd criticise them and try and pressurise them from below. Where do I get my haircut? I did this one myself. I got a new razor online that you just in the shower. Fantastic stuff. Did you like my haircut? Do I think cannabis reform will happen soon? I think they're under pressure on it. They will try to avoid doing anything before the elections. So, yeah. What is the obsession with Shannon Airport? Is that aimed at me? I think it's a scandal that the US military used Shannon Airport to send, for example, in all likelihood, arms to the US military. Okay, so over on Instagram, I'm still on here on Instagram, but on TikTok, our live access was removed. Violation reasons, civic and election integrity. That was absolutely bizarre. So I'm going to go and work out what happened there. So sorry about that, but hello to everybody over on Instagram, and we'll be back.